Lancaster Woodturners Coffee Hour. I'm pleased to be here with you this morning. My name's John Kelsey, as you know. There were some new guys who were emailing me, but I don't see them on screen right now. I've been inviting them to introduce themselves, show some pictures of their work, which I'm inviting all of you to do that too, especially some of you people who don't hardly ever show up. Whether you're a beginner or an expert, we'd still like to see what you do, and we'd like a photo of your workshop so we can see what kind of chaos you live in, or your wood stash or anything else. Just give us a little visit to your workshop and show us what you make. It's show and tell today. I'm gonna steal the show here for a minute, because when I don't, I usually get squeezed out at the end by all you guys using up the whole hour. So I'm gonna take a couple minutes right now, and I'm going to show you my set of nine bowls. I made them for my nephew, who's going to be a chef, or he is a chef. I don't know if he'll ever use them or not. My question to you guys is, how do I finish these things? I was going to tell you, I made them with a magnetic laser coring thing out of a single block, but that's not true. I made them successfully out of wood. And the thing I learned, I've done 3 or 4 of these sort of sets, and the thing I learned quite a while ago is I tried starting with the first one and starting with the biggest one and starting with the smallest one. When you start with the smallest one, you have to fit to the internal cavity of the next one. So you're kind of turning out of order. Whereas if you start with the big one, then you can fit the opening of the big bowl over the back side of the next one and finish the back side before you put it in, move it from, put a foot on it and finish it and put it, and then turn it around and hollow it out. So that's the way I've been doing these. And it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to try and find matching wood, because I didn't get them all in one plank. I got them up to here, maybe out of the plank I bought from Groff and Groff. And then I got the other ones out of cherry that I just had around the shop, because I do like cherry and have a lot of it. I didn't make any funnels. I did, though, have to reject a couple of pieces of cherry. I got them on the lathe and found, these are just too much damage. For kitchen bowls, they really need to be turned cleanly. I don't know what you can see here. I see what you can see. So I'm going to start putting them out here. And my question is, what's the best thing to finish them? My standard finish is water locks, and I'm going to do that because I don't like the greasy of bowl finishes that never dry. But maybe somebody's got some better advice for me here. What am we seeing here? Yeah, I'm just trying to see if I can lay them all out here just for fun for a minute. I probably did it all back. So there they go. That's a set of 9.
Is he going to use them?
Pardon?
Is he going to use them?
We don't know yet. I think he's going to use them. I'm going to finish them with intent that they be used in the kitchen for for cooking prep. Because I've noticed the kid's a chef, and I've noticed that what he does is he prepares all his ingredients and he puts them all in little dishes, and then he has them right there at hand when he starts to cook. So I'm thinking that's what I made these with that in mind, as they would be useful that way. And I might even calibrate them and put a burn line in them, and where the 1 ounce the full cup mark is, and the 2 cups and all that. That might be a useful, I don't know, adornment. So what finish do you guys prefer for bowls that are going to be in use in the kitchen?
John, I've used the general bowl finish, and it seems to hold up well. I've got a daughter-in-law that probably uses one every day that has that finish on it.
I got a can of that I've never used. Does it harden?
Yes.
So it's more like a varnish than an oil. Is that right?
That's right.
It's John. It's a polyurethane,
isn't it?
And if you store it upside down, it won't harden. I have a can 6 years old, and it's perfectly fine.
I use stop-loss bags for water locks, and I've got some I put up in those bags in 2019. Same thing. You got to
Don't open the can. Don't open the can. Punch a hole in it. Put a screw in it.
I've seen you do that. That's a great trick. We have a little video of that out there someplace.
You'll never have.
You guys know what he does? Do you guys follow that? He punches a hole in the can, puts a screw in it. So now he can undo the screw and get a dribble of finish out and put the screw back in. The can hardly ever gets new air in it.
And never showing you a food safe finish. Is that can't quite.
It's a British one. That
it's
one.
Chestnut food safe finish. It's an easy to use clear oil which can be used on items which will come into contact with food.
Now, what is
oil
it?
is it, Don?
What's the
What-
oil?
What
It's-
oil is it?
It's, well, let's have a look. It's low odor, safe.
I'll tell you.
It's a food safe. That's all. It doesn't give you what the
Probably
Makeup
walnut
is,
oil. That's
but-
what a lot of them are based on. I want to go back to Jeff for a second. What's your application routine for the bowl finish you mentioned?
Usually I'll put 3 coats on it if it's going to be in use, and just allow 24 hours between sand after the first 2 coats, and then the final coat I'll just use a 4/0 steel wool just to any air bubbles or anything.
I could do that. That'd be like buffing it without the wax.
In the chat, you've
Right.
gotten several answers. Dave uses Doctor's walnut oil, which I use. And I see John said Odie's oil, which I also use that too.
I saw Odie's oil for sale at Groff and Groff. I didn't buy any. It was like $45 a bottle.
It's not cheap. It's not cheap.
Does it
But-
harden or does it stay like oily?
It stays oily. At least my jar has, and I've been in and out of it a lot. And then
No, I
it's,
mean on the wood. What's the finish like on the
Oh.
wood? Is it in the wood or on the wood?
it's in.
It's in the wood and it's expensive, but you don't have to use much at all. So it lasts a long time.
Yeah.
Okay.
I use half and half tung oil with citrus solution from Milk Paint Company, but I use a lot of Mahoney's walnut oil. Actually, I prefer the walnut oil first, but I've done a lot of the tung oil. Tung oil, I think, is a pretty good one.
Okay.
For,
Again, what is your finish routine with those oils? What do you do?
I just apply them, rub them on.
I mean-
when I'm done turning, after I'm done finish is sanding. Yep.
How many coats do you put on? Do you sand between coats or do you?
The preface is not enough for me, but I do 1 or 2. I don't really load it up. So
When they
How
had
about
the,
you, Mike?
I had the discussion with Mike Mahoney about his oil. He says 1 coat, but I find that's usually not enough, and usually tend to use multiple.
it's an oil, and an oil eventually goes away or soaks in or dries up. So you probably got to retreat it. I've been half tempted to give people a little container of it when I give them a bowl with walnut oil on it.
I don't want to lay that on them. Mike Peace, what do you do?
The only practical use bowl I've got is a cereal bowl, and it's pretty much down to the bare wood. But I used my finish for choice for almost everything, and it's Minwax antique oil, which does not have resin in it. It's got, I think, boil, linseed oil, and mineral spirits. So my thought is you want a couple of coats of something that will soak into the wood and help fill the pores a little bit. I believe, like a lot of other people, that it's all food safe once it cures after maybe 30 days, and any of the ingredients become inert. But I think a little bit of a thin finish that goes into the wood will help keep some of the food out of the pores.
What
Mike,
do you
what
think
other
of finishes like water locks?
I've never used it.
Okay.
Mike, one of the questions I have is how does it wear the finish wear being in water and wet and food over
Nothing is going to survive water.
Okay.
But I think anything you get down into the pores is more apt to keep staying in the pores, but nothing on the surface is going to last. You know, Richard Raffin uses beeswax pretty much, and he says it goes away as soon as you wash it. Mike Mahoney says for his special family dishes, he doesn't put a finish on it.
I just asked that because I would not put poly on if I knew it was going to be used in the kitchen or on the table. Poly's a plastic version of something. I don't know what.
Yeah, my concern about poly is it's very difficult to fix the finish if it gets damaged. I would not want to put polyurethane on anything I put in the kitchen. More not because I'm concerned about the ingredients, because again, yeah, you're right. It's like eating plastic. It's not going to hurt you. You're not going to gain weight from it, but it's not gonna hurt you. But it's hard to fix, because layers don't blend like Minwax, antique oil, and a lot of other finishes. That each one will blend into the other one. Not so with polyurethane.
I use a product called Osmo, and the reason I use it is because it's certified in Canada for safe for children's toys, pets, and direct food contact. And it's the only finish that actually has a certification on its label that you could drink this stuff and it won't hurt you. So you don't have to worry about waiting for it to cure. And it's Osmo. It's a bit expensive, but it's my go-to finish for anything that has direct food contact. And surprisingly, it soaks into the pores, like Mike says. And when it finally cures, we've had stuff sitting in the sink, and you take it out of the sink and you don't even notice the difference. Water just runs right off it. But it's a bit expensive, and you got to forget everything you knew about applying a finish when you use Osmo, because when you put it on, you don't think you're getting anything on it. So it goes a long ways.
Well, Mike, what's your finish routine with Minwax? What do you actually do?
I sand it to the final grit. I put Minwax antique oil on it, and depending on what the product, the final object is, I usually build up 3 to 5 coats and then buff it.
You like
buffing
you
machine.
put it on, then wipe it off, right? You don't leave any puddles.
Yeah. Depends on how well it soaks in. I generally go back and check it to make sure I don't have any wet spots. Yeah, 10 minutes, and then go back and kind of hand buff it with a dry rag.
Okay, that's what we used to wet sand them in between coats, or like after one coat, wet sand it with 400 grit wet dry paper, on the theory that we were pushing a slurry of antique oil and wood dust into the pores. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I used to carpool with a fellow that did that, and he would do it while he's watching television, because he's just sitting there wiping with some fine grit sandpaper, wiping that finish into the wood, and his pieces all look beautiful. They look like lacquer.
And how does that stuff behave when you dip it in the sink and wipe it out, or when it gets wet?
I have no clue. I think if it's on the surface, it's going to come off. It's eventually going to wear down to the bare wood.
Sooner or later, yeah. I wonder if we can get Osmo in this country. I'm going to have a look for it.
Yeah, we get it.
Huh, okay. Anybody else on this, on food safe finishes and what's your finish routine?
The Osmo finishes are basically in the broad spectrum of called hard wax oils. So they're a bunch of whole exotic nuts, and everybody that uses them raves about it. Very expensive, but as it was said earlier, it goes a long way. I haven't used it. I've just never got to it. But.
Well, 9 cherry bowls is going to be a long way,
No, you'd have no trouble getting that out of a can. Just a couple of milliliters is all you need, from what I've heard.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I looked up the chestnut product, and it seems to contain white mineral oil mainly. I have used it. It soaks into the wood, but it takes a long time to dry if you really soak the wood. If you just apply it on the surface and then wipe it again, it's okay. But if you apply several coats and really let it soak into the wood, it will take a long time to dry. But in general, I'm most happy when I use the bowls with food to use either linseed oil, walnut oil, or sunflower oil. For one reason, these are food oils anyway, so they are not harmful, and the customer or the person using the bowl can reapply it easily because you have got it in every household. The only thing is, with these finishes, you must not leave the bowl in the sink with water in it or for a longer time. So I've got one here, I can maybe show it. It's a little bit kind of brown on the inside. And that's a cereal bowl I have had for about 25 years now, and I'm still using it. But whenever I have used it, I clean it afterwards with water and then dry it immediately and leave it in the open so that it dries out. So it depends a bit on the person who's going to use the bowls. How is he or she going to treat them? If they can be treated that way, they will last a long time. But what you shouldn't do, of course, is leave a rest of cereal in them, put that into the fridge or refrigerator and leave it there overnight, and then the wood will start deteriorating, or yeah, it. So
I lost my first cereal bowl, leaving it in the sink with water in it, and it cracked.
Yeah. My wife has one. It didn't crack, but you have fungus in there or black lines in there from leaving it into the refrigerator overnight. So that's not a good idea. So it always depends on the person who's going to use it and how is the person going to treat it. If you really treat it well, then you don't need any of these artificial finishes. A food oil will do. So that's just my point. And also, as it is a cereal bowl, I put milk in again and again, and the fat in the milk seems to soak into the wood a little bit as well and preserves it. So that's another point. Okay.
Well, I once made a set of plates out of maple for someone, and I finished them with a food wax. I forget, it was one of the things, butcher block salad bowl finish and oil. It was basically a beeswax, I think. And the first thing she did was put beets on the plates, and she hated it. And I made her a new set out of walnut that she could put beets on and not notice the color change. So you're right. It depends on how they're going to use it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a point. If I put cherries, strawberries, anything that has got a strong color into it, the wood might keep the color a little bit, but that will disappear again. And if you don't mind that, it's okay. That's, yeah.
I also started an experiment of using a cup that I made also out of cherry that is finished with water locks, and I'm using it for coffee and for white wine and water, and just seeing how it behaves, how it holds up. It hasn't, so far it's okay, but it's only been a couple of days that I began this investigation. So I'll let you know what happens over the next few weeks of the cherry cup, getting everything put in it, including hot coffee.
One of the questions I have is, a lot of times when I give somebody a bowl that's oiled, and then they say, well, what shall I put on it? I say, oil by nature, if you use it, it's going to kind of go away. I don't know what. They say, oh, we got mineral oil. And I go, I don't like you putting mineral oil on. What is the bad side of mineral oil?
Mineral
If you
oil
eat
does not
if
cure
you eat it, it'll give you the runs.
Well, it
But
does
you
not
don't
cure
eat
it
enough
all.
off a bowl for that.
It's an oil. It doesn't dry,
It
ever.
does
Never.
not dry.
Yeah.
Wood and water don't go together. I mean, it just don't work. The boating industry's proved that for 100 years. I don't care what we finish it with, wood and water don't go together, okay?
John, I have to pass on a trick I picked up from one of your, back in your early days of editing fine woodworking. It was from a fellow in France, and that was to heat oils before applying. And Thomas Moser, who makes cherry furniture, also does that. That's his basic finish with boiled linseed oil. to heat it to about 70 degrees Celsius, and it thins it. It soaks into the wood more, and I do that with walnut oil, and it speeds up the cure as well.
I would think a little solvent to make just dilute the oil a little bit on your first coat would do the same thing. It would fly.
Yeah,
it'll
I just put some in a can and heat it with my heat gun. I did a double boiler at the beginning, and then I just started pouring a little bit into a can, stick my heat gun in for a few minutes, and put it on.
Good idea.
On boiled linseed oil, it speeds up the cure by probably 6 or 8 hours.
Okay. Anybody else? I'm going to go to the hands. Okay. Thank you very much. I enjoyed showing. Stuart, you want to talk about this?
Yeah, just to verify, or just to add a bit more to what Bert had to say, he got me onto the Osmo, and I really do like it. It's a very, very good finish. And for applying it, I have found what I do, you need very, very little, a fine, thin coat. But I use a paper towel to apply it. And usually it's on the lathe still, and it should be. And you just turn the speed up on the lathe and buff it in until you got it so hot you can't hang on to the paper. It's really quite warm, and it seems to melt the wax factor into the wood, and it really gives it a good penetration, a good coat. Let it sit for at least 24 hours and do the same thing over again. Apply very little. You don't need very much at all. As long as you got it, you can tell that it's on there. You've got enough, and it goes a long ways. A 1 pint can costs us about $50, and I know I can probably get well over a year out of it for just a general use, and it goes a long ways. And
does it look like wood? Does the wood look like it's finished after you've got it on there?
Yeah, it'll darken it a little bit. It has a bit of color to it, but there are different colors of Osmo that you can get that will.
Does it leave a shine or a sheen, like a coating?
It's got a little bit of a sheen to it. Yeah, the more you put on it, take second or third coat, you can get it fairly shiny. But if you hold that paper on there to get it hot, that's my find that I found the trick to get a good penetration. And when you take it off the lathe, like it won't even hold a fingerprint. You feel that you got nothing on there. It's buffed right out of it pretty much, but it's in the wood, and it penetrates well, and it leaves a good finish. And leave it for a day, give it a second coat the same way.
Thank you, Stu.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna listen. Somebody else is frantically waving their hand at this. I'm gonna everybody good? Yeah, I see the whole gallery view here. Okay, Bruce, you have the floor.
Well, as we kept talking about round and brown, and Jim hates shine, I just couldn't help myself. So this is the piece, or one of the pieces I brought to the Mid-Atlantic.
Wow.
And I'll confess that this is the first piece I ever dyed, but it's a piece of big leaf maple burl that I oriented very carefully to put all the eyes on top and the straws, if you will, on the sides. And with the dye applied, you get this kind of effect. So as we've been talking about finishes, this has a sealer coat of Sutherland Wells polymerized tung oil as a base. And then on top of it is a Sheila Wax liquid friction polish, if you will, but it's a shellac finish that gives it that gloss that's up there. And this was a combination of both a red, actually a Bordeaux trans tint dye, and then orange towards the top. And it gives you that, let's see, gives you that kind of effect. So my original thought was actually to go all the way from red to orange to yellow, but I tried it on a sample and I didn't like the yellow at the top of it. So I punted and just went with orange. But I wanted to kind of show you how to do something like this. It's really not that difficult. Here's the second piece I've made. This one was a much more squat, if you will, form. which I tried to get a very nice round bottom on. This was after hollowing, and then here it's reversed with my favorite rubber chucky to get all the way to the base and just leave a small nib that I could cut off. Now this one had the burl mixed in very bizarre configuration, so I wasn't exactly sure what was going to happen here. But the process I use is very similar. I learned a lot of it from Cindy Drozda. I think others use the same process. But basically, you start with a black dye, and this is trans tint dyes, which are dissolved in alcohol. She recommends using 16:1, which is what I used. I think the label on trans tint dyes tells you to make it 32:1. But I found you do get a nice vibrant color with the 16:1, and your little bottle of dye still goes a very, very long way. And if you can see, I do this right on the lathe. I put a rubber bucket underneath me so I don't really mess up the lathe too much. And it's really quite simple to dye that black. And then the next step, which is the critical one, is to sand the black dye back. And this is actually the bottom of the bowl. With the dye sanded off. You can, I think, use a scraper, but you really want it to be extremely uniform across the bowl. So I found 80 grit sandpaper. I'll admit to using it, works just fine. And then I sand back all the way to about 4,000 grit when I'm done with the black. So here's the top of the bowl. Was there a question there? I heard a... And as you can see, this bowl is kind of the opposite. Now all the straws are on the top, whereas the back was just a mishmash of bark and eyes and straws. So I think I chose right to make this the top of the bowl, but sometimes it's hard to tell. So then the color goes on, and this one I used a combination of blue and green. I could have probably put yellow on top of the blue, but I actually mixed up some green by just mixing yellow and blue and going with the two colors. And this time I went with Waterlox, and this is only one coat of Waterlox, but the final bowl had, I think, one coat of Waterlox sealer followed by 5 coats of Waterlox applied with a 24-hour drying time, and then the Bleil system on top of it, just in case Jim thought it wasn't shiny enough yet. And you get, well, you get this. So the pattern is just amazing, and it's really all about what was in the wood and the combination of putting that black underneath it that gives it that standout kind of look. So I think I picked it for the top.
What is your hollowing method on this?
I'm sorry?
What's your method of hollowing?
I use the Trent Bosch system, and a little challenging on a piece this wide, which is why I used a pretty big hole. This has about 1.5 inch hole that I then covered with a collar. But with the full hook tool, I could get pretty close to the end. I can't say that I'm a 1/4 inch at the far end, but it's the rest of the bowl is probably 1/4 inch, and I'm certainly close to the edge.
Are you using a laser with it?
Yes.
And is that rubber chucky something you made or something you bought someplace?
No, that is the trade name of buying the product. The thing about the rubber chucky is the bowl is not being supported by the collar. This aluminum rod goes right through the bowl, and then there is a rubber piece on the end of it, and you're setting this length so the most of the support is pushing against the bottom of the bowl with very little pressure against the collar here, so you don't break it.
Very, very clever. I've only ever done that with an aluminum cone that I invert, but it's all the pressures on the opening. That's very clever.
It's very clever, and they're not horribly expensive to get a whole set of different kinds of rubber chuckies to do these kinds of things.
Okay.
Probably doesn't mark the piece either. The aluminum core marks the piece.
Well, no, yeah, it's definitely, because there's actually that silicone rubber is actually what's on the bottom of the bowl as well. There's a little piece that fits onto the end of the aluminum rod that gives you a rubber stopper, if you will, on the bottom. So yeah, it doesn't mark the piece.
More questions for Bruce? Comments and questions? It's amazing work. Really
I
love it.
made one of those rods from 3/4 by 10 coarse rod from the hardware store, and then turned a wooden cone and followed it up with a couple of nuts. And on the wooden cone, I wrapped a piece, kind of like a teepee, wrapped a piece of fun foam, 1/16 inch closed cell foam that you can get from Michael's or Hobby Lobby.
Yeah, Dave Dillo is holding up the exact piece that I use. He's showing you the rubber piece that's on the end.
I see. That's, yeah. And so does that come in various sizes, is it?
It does come in a couple of sizes, yes. And the cones come in a couple of sizes too.
And it has a taper on the other end, so it just goes in the tailstock or the headstock.
The
Tailstock.
headstock, it's driven.
Headstock, yeah.
By the
Very,
way,
very cool.
By the way, the rubber Chucky people tell you if your shop gets cold in the winter, don't keep your Chuckies there. Put them in warm. Did you guys know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, look at the directions from rubber Chuckies. When I got it, I go, holy cow. So I put it in where I keep my paints and stuff in the wintertime, because that stays up in the 60s. Apparently it affects the rubber compound they're using. I love the rubber Chuckies. Yeah.
Wouldn't surprise me. Great work, Bruce. That's really beautiful stuff. Is that your first experiences with dyeing, or you've been doing it for a while?
No, actually, the piece I brought to the Mid-Atlantic, that red one, is the first piece I did that way. Yeah, the green blue one is the second one. They're coming. I'm having fun with it.
That's all. That's everything. Any other questions for Bruce? Okay. Thank you very much, Bruce. How about you, Dave Bleil?
There are some conversations about lids and tops for boxes, and I just wanted to say something about one I have here. And what this is I'm sorry about the lighting. I'm not getting what I really want here. But basically I have a top, and on the bottom of the top, this is for a child, like a newborn. And on the bottom of the top, what I'm going to do, this is unfinished, I'll put the birth date and the child's name. So I want this lid to be relatively loose. So when you're making a lid, in this particular case, sometimes the parent may want the lid the upside down so that you can see the child's name and other stuff like that. And you want to make sure in this case that the lid comes off easily, not only for the parent, but the child. You don't want that to get stuck. So what I usually do is I make the lid, it's the tenon, and then I work on the box. And the rest of the box is unfinished until I get that lid the way I want it. And then I finish the rest of the box. So just a little conversation about the idea of the lids that were discussed last time. Also, yesterday was International Top Spinning Day. So just thought I'd show a lid. Thank you.
Hey, Dave, was there a face on the top of that?
Yes.
Show us that.
Yeah. Try to get that up here.
You had a little video of these too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And tilt it up a little more so we can see it a little better. Okay. Tilt.
There. And what I do is I make different faces. And these are for boys. So for girls, the girls' box is usually a piece of spalted maple or some light color. The lid has a finial. I'm doing this wrong again. The lid has a finial that's a little acorn, and the lid is textured, but it's still a top. And hopefully the parents will keep it as keepsakes. I don't know if they will or not, but my grandchildren have it and some great nephews and stuff like that.
Questions?
Thanks for your attention.
Questions and comments. I think that's very clever. I never saw that idea before of the box lid as top.
I think the boxes I think that's on the website, our website, Dave's boxes that shows all these things besides acorns and some other things. Thanks
I
again
hadn't
for your
seen 'em.
attention. I
Yeah.
want one question. The walnut oil. If I make a small bowl and I use the walnut oil and I give it to someone, according to Kai, the advantage would be that they could always put some more walnut oil on it if they needed to. I've also used water locks. Is that correct with the walnut oil?
Yes,
I
you
think
can apply it very, very easily, actually.
I
with a
think they could actually put like canola oil on it for that matter.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Hey, John.
Ray?
Hey, I gotta give a shout out to Dave. Over the last couple of years, we've seen some of his stuff. You know, I had an opportunity for a number of years to travel in Europe, and his boxes and tops and stuff like that are really like what you see from the toy manufacturers over in Europe. The faces, the colors, and I haven't had an opportunity. He's on here that he does some spectacular stuff. When you look at his handout and you look at it, he does not say, "Look at me." It's just when you find out that he does it, it's a wow factor, because we don't see a lot of people do that crafty stuff with the faces and that. So, Dave, you're doing a great job. Your stuff is really spectacular.
Great. Thank you very much. I really appreciate hearing something like that. I have some, I know a box in Germany. I know I have one in Japan. I'm not sure where a lot of the others are, but thank you very much. Great to hear. Encouraging.
So tell us how you make the face. What do you do? Do you paint it on or stencil? Is it
Yeah. Go back to me. The face is basically I make the tenon for the spinning. I make that, and what I do is I tape all that off, and then I spray it with red lacquer. The rest of the face, if you look on the website for boxes, to make the face, one of the things I do is I put some real light lines of pencil marks on it so that I have an idea where I'm going to put the mouth, where I'm going to put the eyes. And then all I do is use a Sharpie to put that on. It's a real simple type of thing to do, put the Sharpie on. Now, because this is made for the future, I've taped off the bottom so that I don't get any finish on the bottom, because I want to put the child, with a Sharpie, I want to put the child's name and birth date on there before I give it. And then I finish the whole thing. The boys get the maple top and walnut bottom, and the girls get the walnut top with the acorn finial and a spalter, the lighter maple wood of some sort if I have it.
And what's the finish you put on over the paint?
I use wipe on poly for almost
Wipe on
everything
poly.
like this. Probably
Right over the Sharpie.
2 to 5 coats, depending on how it absorbs, especially the walnut.
Beautiful stuff. Very clever.
Like I said, the box things, instructions are on the website. Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Hey,
Thank
Dave.
you, Dave.
Dave, one thing I wonder is, why don't you burn the face on the top? Sharpies are gonna fade or change to purple over time, aren't they?
Not from what I've seen with my grandchildren. I mean, they have things that are 7 years old and stuff like that, and they don't use them a lot. They sit on the shelf and they put special, treasures in them and crap like that. So I haven't gotten any comments from parents about any problem with that. The Sharpie is so easy to use. So I can do it quickly and do a nice job. Thanks for asking.
Yeah,
There's
it
also,
makes protecting.
there's a group of combo markers that are archival that the ink is made to stay around a long, long time, and they behave very much like Sharpies. We usually have one end of the brush and the other end's a nib.
Well, as mentioned, you mentioned the Tombow. Sometimes I put it like a red cheek on there. what I'll do is I put a touch of the Tombow on there and just kind of rub it till it kind of gets like a red cheek. So I do use that occasionally, but I like the Sharpies. And the nose with the red enamel, I know that's not going to come off, and kids can use it and not have to worry about it.
Dave, have you ever had problems with the Sharpie or the Tombow running into the finish, or the finish kind of getting blurred, or the writing getting blurred by the finish? Or...
Normally, no. Actually, I did have that occur at one time because I tried to put a finish on before I was absolutely sure everything was good and dry. But no, generally no problem at all. It's been great.
So the trick is to let it dry then, and then you wipe your finish on, and that works.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great conversation. Thank you. Okay, Mike Peace, what do you have today?
Okay, a couple of ornaments yesterday.
Nice. Very nice.
Simple.
Now, how big are those actually? I mean, how big was the blank?
1 5/8, and about 6 inches long. I use one piece for each one. Yeah.
That's where I go wrong on all those things. I start with a blank that's too big, and it comes out, the finished thing out the other end comes out too big too.
I learned that with making a chess set. If you size those blanks to exactly what the round should be, and you center them, you know, they're all going to come out exactly the right size without a lot of wasted effort.
That's a good point. Anything else from you?
Nope, that's it.
Questions for Mike? Anybody want to ask him anything? Tell him something. Okay, Bowman, what do you have today?
Well, it's COVID time for me. So I had poured a bunch of blanks. I use 4-inch PVC, and I get a wedge of wood and jam it down in and then pour epoxy around. I'd done a bunch of them during my intense short times in the shop during COVID, and they had cured. So I managed to get to the point of where I could, turn them. So I did, and I will.
How do you get them out of? How do you get them out of the pipe?
I tried putting mineral oil around it, but boy, it don't. I just take them with a bandsaw and cut them. I just cut them into and then 2 halves will break right away. So
okay,
they're expensive. So I would glue them back together again, but after a while, after 2 or 3 cutting through, you can't seal them up again anymore, because I use the cheap, what we call testing caps for the bottom. They're the little plastic caps they put on to seal the system when the inspectors are checking it to make sure it's airtight or moisture tight. And I knew about them. They're like 78 cents. So I just cut them off and throw them away on the bandsaw. But after a while, they become too small. So I'm toying around with that idea of what I'm going to do. I got 3 out of 1 set of Schedule 40. But now it's too small, so I can't fit the cap anymore. That's the bite. So, all right, let me show you what I made out of those. Let me get this share screen up here. Here we go. Are you seeing that okay?
Yeah, very, very well. You couldn't use a cardboard mailing tube for that stuff.
You know, that's an idea, John. I like that idea. I don't know.
Maybe the sonotube people make a 4-inch one. You know, the sonotubes that they use for concrete.
Yeah, I haven't seen them that small, but boy, that's a great idea. Because I'm looking for some way to do it. It's not so plastic's gotten so blooming expensive. I just rather I'm going to go look at that. Thanks, John. This is.
Let's talk about the
Huh?
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is this is my first of 3 pieces. Again, this is, it's about 7 inches tall, about 3.5 wide, because I poured in a 4-inch thing. This one is an interesting example. I had copied a pattern from someone on the web somewhere, and I said, I got to try to do that. Well, I never managed to do that very well, and so I made my own pattern. I recut it actually, and I was very delighted with it. I hope that that's it on the lathe, by the way. And I said, oh, that's going to be nice. That's the bottom. This is Osage orange buried in a well, it's a clear, but it has Technoglow material in it, so it's not pure clear. That's the look of it. I was just delighted. This Osage orange had a wedge of black in it, which I said I got to turn that to the point of where it'll show right. And the first choice is which is top, which is bottom. And if you didn't take a picture, sometimes in the epoxy, it's hard to remember which side of the thing you want to use. So, and I always make these with a bore down so that I can put a test tube. That's a plastic test tube. Boy, I had a hard time finding the size I needed. So that it can drop it in, and you can put a wet, you can put in a wet piece of flour. Here's
you don't have to do a whole lot of hollowing there either, do you?
No, anything that doesn't have to be hollowed is my favorite thing. So I had started out with the idea of cutting, turning one and then slicing an inch off either side so that I have a 2-inch center flat with the perimeter. Well, the first one, which I was going to do it to, I said, no, it's just beautiful like it is. So my second piece, and I think this is maple, some of my spalted maple, and a light purple translucent type epoxy. So that's, I just turned a simple shape, but let me show you. Let's go the other way, Jim. So, and this one also gets a insert. Now, you think that's out of focus. That's because of the way the epoxy messes with it. That's the one side.
No, I don't think it's out of focus. I think it's got square corners.
What?
Looks like multi-axis turning, is it?
No. This is, I turned this as a round one, and then all it took it is set it up on the bandsaw, and I chopped off the opposite sides, and this is what was left. And I was so delighted that I hit this one right on the texture of the wood that I just loved. And this was again a black space in the Osage orange. Well, it got blacker because of the epoxy. So let me go the other way. Sorry. So I've been having fun. This gives you an idea what it looks like. It's 2 inches thick now. It started out 4 inches. So I roughly took an inch off either side. The challenge is to try to get them parallel to do it. So I just took them on the disc sander and flattened them a little. I was going to run through the drum sander. I said, nah, I can get it good enough on the disc sander and the vertical sander to smooth it down. So that is my fun of the last 3 days. I'm going to show this. Ken brought me 2 Vasco brought me 2 wedges of a crotch from his home area where somebody cut an oak tree down with beautiful flame in it. So I'm trying to dry it because it's still up at 20%. And then I'm going to do an emerging bowl as per Mike Peace's video. I did it. That's a sample test on some junk 2x4, but I just want to see what it looked like and what I got to deal with. So I ended up, it measured 12% on the surface. I ended up cutting it to line up for the blank. Well, it measures 20 plus inside. So when you use a moisture meter, you got to get those points down to where it's really important. So that's my little piece of fun in the last while. I didn't need to use dust collection because I didn't have much dust. It was mostly ribbons of epoxy all over the shop. I did shoot a video of all three of them, but it's going to be days of editing because I shot 2 cameras and didn't have, you know what clap sync is, so I have to line up each piece synchronously by itself. And I'm using GoPros. GoPros drive me crazy because of their file numbering system. They're weird in their numbering system. That's all I can say. So,
Jim, if you want a cardboard tube, do you have carpet shops over there?
what did you ask me? Carpet shops?
Do you have carpet shops?
Oh yes.
Go and get the carpet tubes from the shops after they've laid the carpets.
Hey, that's awesome.
The cord, that's about 4 inches in diameter, 4 to 5 inches, if I recollect.
That was worth being on here and learning about a Mickey. So
Just remember that the concrete tubes work because they have a plastic coating on the inside that the epoxy doesn't go through. Now you have a cardboard piece that will absolutely soak epoxy right through it. So you would have to coat it with tape, with epoxy tape or polyethylene or something to keep it from penetrating that.
Well, you could use cling film.
What's the difference? You could just turn it off at the end.
Or use cling film on the inside.
Something, yeah, well, PVC, I don't know. I think that might work.
So you're right. I was just gonna call bull on that idea, Bruce, but you're right, because if I have epoxy run over in a form and it runs across my countertop, it glues down any cardboard or paper that's there. You're right. It soaks up in it, doesn't it?
It absolutely will soak it up and go right through it.
Well, will it leak out through it, or will it just soak it and then stay there?
It'll leak right through it.
Okay, the leaking is not okay. If it's just soaked into the cardboard, just turn it off at the end. It's just like a piece of bark.
Could you use a spray lacquer on the inside?
Probably.
Don't know.
Use packing tape in the inside.
Well, why don't you get hold of cling film and put it down through the inside?
That's probably a good idea, Don, because that would push it out too when you pour it. So
yeah.
I use one of the, I think it's Weissbond makes a tape. It's like packing tape. They sell it at an expensive price because it's special to them. But I use that on the inside of forms. So it's a release type of thing. I could do that, but on a 4-inch one, it's going to be hard to go down in there and tape it on. I like Don's idea. Yeah.
If you want to get any kind of a custom sized circle, you can buy that stuff. It's called Coroplast, 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 and it's like it's like corrugated cardboard, so it comes in a flat sheet, but because it's corrugated, you can take a scalpel and just slice down through just one of the layers, and then you can bend it into whatever shape you want, and then just put a piece of tape on the to seal your circle, and just hot glue the bottom on, and it's plastic, so the resin doesn't tend to stick to it. And then to open it, you just take off that one piece of tape and open it up, and you should be able to reuse it a number of times. But that's if you need some different sizes of circles, rather than trying to find the exact size of tube that you need, you can make your own tube.
Somebody mentioned lacquer spray. Boy, anytime I can avoid having to spray lacquer, I'm a happy man. I have some compromised lung issue going on, and lacquer's just, I build myself a box to spray lacquer in, but that's a pain to have to set it up every time I get the lacquer can out. So
I think I just set up the cardboard tube and then pour some varnish in it and swirl it around and pour it out again, let it dry.
Okay. Yeah. I wonder if old latex paint, you can get it cheap at Home Depot when somebody gets the wrong color. I wonder if that would seal it enough.
You
Probably.
know, on your PVC tube, once you've used it and you've cut it the first time, couldn't you put it back together with band clamps so you could open it every time you wanted?
Don, you no, who was saying that? I missed
Me.
it.
That's Jim.
Jim. Hey, you know, that's exactly what I did the third time. The second time I glued it together. I just put some cement on, stuck them together. It was the third time it was getting too small for the cap on the end. So I put it like 3 or 4 hose clamps on it.
Yeah.
And it worked. But it started tapering up a little.
But if you do it when you only cut it the first time, in fact, put a piece of duct tape across the first cut, and then it would hinge open, and you could just hinge it open and put it back together.
Yeah, the only trouble is, Jim, every time you cut it, you are taking more off of the circumference.
Don't cut it. You've already cut it.
No, it's glued. It's glued back together. Am I not on the same wavelength?
No, I don't think.
One of the ways, I don't know if you can get the right stock, but if you could turn a piece of polyethylene or glue, something, that would be a perfect thing. And just I would spray it with mold release and shove it in there if you can get something thick enough. But don't know if you can get something thick enough for what you're looking for.
To me, you could make a 2-part mold, and
I think that's what Jim's trying.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Flanges on it.
Yeah, tape it.
Just
Tape
try
it.
it. Yeah.
Jim, you're right. I should think about it that way, not glue it together, just tape it together. Yeah.
Well, do any of you guys cast metal, aluminum, or pewter, or anything like that?
I do. Yeah.
What do you use for that for mold release and molds?
Oh, I don't cast it that way. I cut a groove in the wood and then pour it in the wood and then turn whatever I want out of that. So that I've actually got it attached to the wood when I do it.
The problem you have with epoxy, John, is it stays liquid a very long time and it's quite thin. So when you pour these deep pour epoxies, it's going to penetrate for a whole day, maybe 2 days. So the smallest tiny opening is going to leak an incredible amount. So you have to be really careful, because even with some of those concrete tubes, I've had very tiny pinprick holes, and it starts going through, and you start worrying how much is going to come through before it cures enough to stop the leak. And usually it's catastrophic, so you have to be careful. But yeah,
I saw that at Ben Kaufman's shop. Ben was making rounds of walnut.
If you just had a solid piece of polyethylene, that would be the best thing you could have. And I would spray it with mold release, and you could probably pull it out at the end without messing with it. But
or draft it a little bit if you're going to try it. Draft
exactly,
it so you knock it out. Yeah,
that's even a better idea.
Yeah, the biggest bite with this epoxy stuff is the molds. The molds. I spend more time making a mold that won't leak. I make it, then I fill it with water and let it sit in my shop for a couple hours. And if it don't leak, then I figure we're good for the epoxy. Because the last thing I want to see is that $100 a gallon epoxy running out of hole somewhere.
Have you checked out this company called Crafted Elements? They make all kinds of silicone molds. And I have 2-inch deep molds that I think I have in 12 and maybe 14 or 16 inches diameter. And they never leak, they're flexible, and you just spray them with mold release and your product comes right out. They're wonderful things, but they don't necessarily have the shape to fill things inside like you're talking about doing. But it's an incredible time saver.
Maybe my problem is I don't use mold release and used mineral oil inside the 4-inch. My theory was that I would just saw the end off, which is 78 cents cap on it, and knock it out. Well, that didn't happen. Now, part of the problem is the Schedule 40 doesn't have a real smooth finish inside. And I didn't use mold release. Maybe mold release would have worked, and I could just keep reusing the same cylinder, which was the strategy.
Well, I've used Schedule 40 and I've gotten product out of it, but absolutely I use mold release. And you have to use epoxy mold release, because some of it is urethane mold release and they are not the same. And they will not not work the same. So make sure you get yourself epoxy mold release. I know I got it through Amazon. It comes from China somewhere, but I got it through Amazon. And it's important that you use that product or a epoxy specified mold release.
The one time I tried it, I went into the kitchen and grabbed my wife's Pam or whatever you call it to spray on a pan. And I said, this will be my mold release. Well, guess what? That didn't work too hot.
Yeah, that won't work too well.
Well, there's a deep well of experience here, that's for sure. And it's very specialized knowledge, and then another very entertaining Woodturners coffee hour. See you all next week.
See you next
Or
week.
see you Saturday
Thanks,
at Open
John.
Shop. We're having
Thank
open
you.
shop this week in New Holland. So Saturday morning.
See you. Bye bye.
Wood shop. Thank God for wood.